Figuring I would start the year with a very bad video where I just throw some low IQ opinions at the camera, see what sticks, and I'm curious what you guys think about it as well. Because recently I've been watching some old movies. I've been watching Indiana Jones, I've been watching Karate Kid, and I remember that I grew up with this type of films where you would have the action taking place in a mystical land, quote unquote, whether it was an Amazonian jungle or maybe Japan or ancient China, and you would see people do extraordinary things there. Whether it was Indiana going into some old temple and there were ancient traps and really interesting treasure there, or you would see some people fighting in ancient China jumping really high in the air. And I'm talking about the size of tall buildings, and they were fighting in mid-air and whatnot. And you also had the explorers going into the ancient jungle and meeting lost tribes, and they would have adventures there. And I realized that these movies will never be made again. We're never going to see stuff like that ever again, and there's several reasons for it. The first reason is technology has evolved to the point where you can just pull out your smartphone and find the Starbucks next to that Amazonian jungle. My point is that there is no more mystery anymore. All the places on Earth have a McDonald's now. Everything is explored. There is no more mystique. It's very difficult to create an interesting movie that has any sort of magic to it, I suppose. I mean, if you think about it, in Karate Kid, they have magic. Like the demon sorcerer Miyagi, just smacking his hands and rubbing them together and then placing it on the leg of LaRusso, and all of a sudden his foot starts working again. I mean, if doctors had access to that technology, man, we wouldn't even need X-ray anymore. But that doesn't exist because people can just pull out their smartphones, they can look into it, and they can see it's fake. Technology allowed us to even debunk martial arts. What do I mean by this? Well, when I grew up, there was this mentality that if you study hard enough, karate, kung fu, or all sorts of ninjutsus and stuff like Xena Warrior Princess that knew pressure points, that if you were good enough in these things, you could actually overcome adversaries that were twice or three times more powerful than you. In fact, the whole TV show Buffy and Xena were based that they were so talented in fighting that they could even hold their own against 10 or 20 men. And then you have MMA. MMA is mixed martial arts. And this completely destroyed the stereotype that, when it comes to hand-to-hand combat, the Asians have mastered it and they have like wise people that know all this bullshit. No, it seems to be that there are just a couple of fighting styles that work and everything else is horseshit. So boxing works, kickboxing works. Surprisingly, one of the most effective ones is judo, and all the others are like useless. I mean, not useless that in the sense they're not good for the body, because you can still do a lot of exercise and work out as you're practicing these things, but they wouldn't be useful if someone comes up at you in a street corner. So, knowing this, having access to this information, it's very difficult for me to enjoy something like Cobra Kai anymore. Even though the TV show itself is very enjoyable and I like the drama and the story, when the fights start happening, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, sure. A couple of kids can beat up teachers. It's the ending of the previous season, spoiler alert. You got like a couple of tiny kids just beating some adults. And I'm like, that doesn't happen. The adult can just not even guard himself, can just stay there like a statue. And the kids can just try to punch and kick as much as they want. They're not going to do any damage. That's reality. And I wish I wouldn't know this. Like, I wish this information wouldn't exist in my brain so I can get more immersion when looking at these things. But all of this aside, yeah, I don't think we're going to see any more interesting movies taking place in the Amazon jungle. And look, they managed to find this tribe, and they're doing something cool. Or this takes place in China, and they're doing something interesting. And by the way, speaking of China, they actually had a couple of problems there. Like, once MMA happened, some masters that were practicing esoteric forms of martial arts, and they even had grants from the government, they got KO'd within 5 seconds. So, like the Chinese government that took away their grants because they realized that those martial arts only work like within the rules of that martial art, but once it takes contact with the world, it doesn't work. It's kind of like some ideologies that work on the internet only when you're talking with other people of those ideologies, and they're like, yeah. But when you take those ideas and you put them into the real world, people think you're crazy. And I suppose there's also the second issue, which is political correctness. So basically, Indiana Jones is already under attack because the Temple of Doom has negative stereotypes towards fictional people. It's to the point where art isn't free anymore. They can't just do whatever it wants. Other countries can do whatever they want. I mean, watch Wolf Warrior. That's a movie made in China, and see how it treats Americans in that movie. It's very unpleasant. But then again, so what? Why shouldn't art be offensive? Why shouldn't people get offended when watching a movie? It adds to the experience of it. And again, if you don't like it, you shouldn't watch it. But unfortunately, that's not how things are being judged in the West right now. No, everything that's being done in the West is this going to be even potentially remotely found offensive by someone else? I mean, there was like this game that came up recently, was in a trailer, and it had nothing to do with the real world. It was in a fictional universe, but you had some monsters that wore masks. And the monsters were like these black, fuzzy creatures. I mean, they weren't even human. They were like, I think it were spirits or something. And a couple of social justice activists complained that, oh, well, you're stereotyping tribes or something. And immediately the company went, oh, so sorry, masa, so sorry, please. And it's like, what? Come on. Really, like, what? Why do you have to bend to these people? I'm curious, like, how many opportunities of good stories have been lost simply because of outrage. I mean, when you look at last year and you see some of the movies that got canceled, I mean, Gone with the Wind, a movie which had the first black woman to win an Oscar, got pulled off Netflix and HBO Max. If you're looking at what these people get offended, they get offended on Ace Ventura. They get offended on Baby It's Cold Outside, traditional songs, and, wet ass pussy. No, that's just empowering and that's amazing. But Baby It's Cold Outside, that's horrible. Look at the Japanese anime that they hate. Legend of the Shield Hero, Goblin Slayer, Attack on Titan. Like, all of these, if they would have their way, they would never be aired. And again, like, some movies that were aired got canceled because of these people. Gone with the Wind, perfect example. I mean, you can go to any normie, and the moment you told them that Gone with the Wind was canceled, they just can't understand. It's like, have people gone insane? And the answer is yes, they did that go insane. And when people tell me, it's like, oh no, political correctness isn't ruining art. Political correctness is just about, being considerate to other people. Like, you're already trying to get movies, and you're admitting that movies that were not only a cultural hit, but they made the round of the world, and literally every nation that saw Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom enjoyed that movie. Like, you can go wherever you want in the world where people speak English, and you tell them about Indiana Jones, and not only do they know what it is, they also enjoyed the movie. And you're telling me that should have been canceled. That shouldn't have existed. Like, if you had the time machine, you'd go back in time and prevented that from happening. And it's disturbing. I don't know how long it will last. Like, usually these things last for a couple of years before people calm the fuck down. But this time it seems that it's here to stay a little longer. Because maybe a lot of you don't remember, but there used to be the same political correctness madness in the West back in the 90s. But then it went away. And you had some of the most interesting and some of the most culturally renowned movies and music and art that America has ever produced. But now that it's back, everything in the West is shit again. Like, it's very difficult for me to even recommend movies anymore. It's very difficult for me to recommend TV shows anymore. By the way, watch Cobra Kai, new season. It's really great. And also watch Better Call Saul. And watch Attack on Titan. If you stopped watching Attack on Titan, you should pick it up again, because it got really good. There's a massive plot twist. Completely changes the vibe and the theme of the whole thing. But yeah, so I just wanted to start my year with this. Just wanted to get my point out there. And let me know what you think. I'll see you guys in the comment section.